Yo, what's going on today, guys? We're back here for another video, and today I'm going to be giving you the top 10 best decks from Mega Rising. And as you can see here, the first one is going to be Suicune. Suicune did not die. It actually had a huge buff with the addition of Greninja EX. Not only is it a really big tank that the deck needed at 170 HP, 100 damage is very solid with the ability to swap out any water type that is in the active to something on the bench. This is like the most common build currently being played. Two Greninja regular ones, one because Oricorio is very prevalent in the meta, and two, the pings are still extremely broken. Greninja is more of a situational option. You also have the May to be able to, maybe swap out a Greninja to find a Greninja EX if the May doesn't screw you over, as well as double Cyrus is something that is needed in this meta. And besides that, is basically just a regular, Suicune build. You have the one Irida. I kind of wish there's room for two Irida, but most Suicune builds are only running one. You can get the May, which I personally do. However, I think it is more common to run May. I personally am a May hater because the card never works for me, or I always have a bottom deck. And the one Giant Cape, I also see some people playing one Irida, two Giant Cape, so that also is another option if you do want to remove the May. Anyways, Suicune is still very good. It is probably a top 2, top 3 deck right now in the game. And it is probably going to be the new Dark Tina, but for the year 2 Pokemon Pocket, as it'll probably be a deck that will never die. Next up, we have the classic Oricorio Absol. This deck is a very good control deck. You have the Pichu for the Oricorio. This deck is pure dark. You have the Darker for that additional 20 damage, so it's basically a red in the deck once everything is ready to attack. Two Professor Researches, the two PCLs. I've seen some people cut out a PCL, run something like that red for that extra thing in case don't have 2 energy or Darkrai on the field when you attack with Absol, so that is something you can't take note of. 2 Cyruses is a must because everything is low damage in the deck, as well as that one Copycat for the extra consistency, because you need to find that Pichu, you need to find that Oricorio. The Copycat is going to help you find that, along with the Professor Researches, the 2 Pokeballs, the 1 red card, the 2 Giant Capes, and the 1 X-Speed. Something to note is that sometimes, you usually want a red card, a big hand into a small hand. With Absol, you actually might want to wait because you do want to attack them, get that Cyrus out of their hand, or you might see that they don't actually have the card that you need to snatch, so you could attack with Absol, maybe remove some random card, whatever they have in their hand, maybe they have a PCL. Then on the following turn, if Absol can attack and not die in return, you could red card them to maybe try to snap that Cyrus if you do get lucky and they do end up drawing it off the red card. So that is just something to keep note when you are playing Absol. Anyways, this is like one of my favorite decks in the game just because I really like Mega Absol. However, let's move on to what I think is the next best deck. So this deck just popped out of nowhere, dude, starting yesterday. Magnezone is pretty good into both Oricorio Absol as well as the Suicune. Obviously, the Suicunes have to have specifically Greninja if you are walling with an Oricorio, which isn't too hard. But if they don't find it fast enough and they don't have that Greninja EX plus a Greninja combo to be able to swap out, the Oricorio is going to attack that Suicune. Magnezone is going to come in and just blast him for that 130 damage, which the weakness of Suicune being weak to electric. Then you also have that one Chingling. You kind of have to starve it to be useful. Sometimes you can swap out and then go into it because Magnezone does ramp its own energy. Chingling is just very good. It's just a very annoying card, especially in the Suicune matchup. Like if you go first with a Chingling or Oricorio and Magnemite and you get the whole Magnezone line because you do have double Copycat, that Suicune player is getting absolutely cooked. As you know, Greninja can never come in as the Magnezone will one-shot them if they don't have a cape on them. Anyways, for like the extra super consistency, you have both Professor Researches and double Copycat. You only have 1 Cyrus. PCL is very nice in this deck as well as the 2 Pokeballs, the 1 red card, and the 2 Giant Capes, which is very nice to be able to put on something like an Oricorio to make sure Greninja won't be able to, one-shot them in the same turn without previous pings, as well as the PCL Cape combo on Magnezone lets you live that extra hit you might need to be able to get that another 110 attack off. This is a deck, like I said, that is basically becoming an anti-meta deck. And right now, I think it is very powerful. I think the stocks of Magnezone are going to be rising in the following days. And I think we will only see more and more Magnezone until something comes out that also will counter Magnezone. And then I expect like Absol Suicune to come back. And it might just be like that rotation of like the counter comes out, the counter, and then the counter is gone, so the top decks come back, and then you know that rinse and repeat cycle. Another deck, dude, which is one of my favorites, we have the Decidueye back. So the Decidueye really takes advantage of both Suicune being one of the best decks, as well as Absol, you know, having that weakness to grass. If you can snap that thing, it can never come in because the Decidueye EX will be able to, you know, just do 120 damage to it, which will probably be able to get that finishing KO. It's also nice because you are playing 2 Dartrix, so something like Chingling really doesn't affect this deck. Sometimes, like, don't get me wrong, it can, but because you're playing the 2 Dartrix with the Leaf Capes, like, usually you should be safe if you have Dartrix Leaf Cape and then, like, evolve Erica or something. However, I think this is the best Decidueye list. This is a list I've been playing since day 3. I originally tried the Chingling Decidueye deck out that I saw some people have success with early on, especially with the Blazikins. Now that the Blazikins are gone, you don't need Chingling. I think Chingling is 99% of the time useless actually in Decidueye. So I'm a very anti-Chingling Decidueye player. If you guys are new to the channel, I have just been a Decidueye fan. You know, I've had great tournament results. I've also just got top 1K basically playing solo Decidueye last season. Decidueye against Suicune, as long as you draw good, is almost an auto win. Against Absol Ori, there are some layers. Like, if they don't start Pichu Ori and they go first, like, they're freaking cooked, dude, if you have that rare candy. But there are some lines where Absol can take it over. This deck might drop down a little bit because Magnezone is a pretty bad matchup. Alteria also is like the second bad matchup. However, not the most, I mean, don't get me wrong, Alteria is pretty common, but Alteria does lose to both Suicune and Absol Ori. And basically, let me just stop yapping about the Decidueye, bro. They line up 2 rare candies, 2 Professor Research, the 2 copycats. I know some people are playing 1 copycat, 1 May. I like the 2 copycats because I always want to find one. I'm not really a big fan of May, like I said before. We have 2 Lilies, 1 Erica, and then the 2 Leaf Capes. I almost wanted to play 2 Ericas with 1 Lily, just in case I would have to use like an Erica on a Dartrix with a Leaf Cape. I feel like if I'm ever in that situation anyways, I'm probably losing. And in this meta, the 10 extra HP can come up. However, if you want to play 2 Ericas because you may have like 2 full arts and only 1 full art of Lily, you can. Obviously the 2 Lilies for that extra 10 HP is just the most optimal. Next up, we have a variety of Alteria variations. So the first one is going to be the most common one, the Chingling Jirachi with the 1 Sableye for the Ori out. This one is something like 2 Professor Research, the 1 copycat for that consistency, Sabrina, Cyrus, Mars, the Alicia because everything is 50 HP and below besides Sableye, 2 Pokeballs, and then the 1 red card. So this was kind of like the most common version for a while. However, people have been like teching it out and actually adding in an Indeedee in favor of something like a second Jirachi because that extra 20 healing is nice. You know, Indeedee also can be a good attacker into certain things with high energy. I mean, there really isn't much in the format that has super high energy besides like Gyarados, but I'm gonna be honest, bro. First off, we already have Jirachi. Second, Gyarados isn't super meta relevant. Like that extra 20 is really nice, you know, to be able to live some thresholds. Plus, in like a baby war, like a Jirachi war, like a DD can come up in clutch. And besides that, it's the exact same thing, like exact same deck list, bro. Just like I said, -1 Jirachi. I feel like this version is getting way more popular, so I expect this kind of be like the new standard. However, we do have some alternative variants of Alteria. This one is playing the non-EX Alteria for an Ori out, as well as 2 Indeedees to be a super like more tanky version, where like you could heal 40 damage a turn. And then 2 Jirachis, just kind of like drop in the whole Chingling package with the 2 Lycias, only 1 Pokeball because you know you have the 2 Lycias, 2 Cyruses, which I actually kind of like this because I think 2 Cyrus is the best way to play decks if you can't slot both. If you can't slot both of them in because of Absol, because that 2 Professor Research, the 1 Copycat, the 1 Mars, the 1 Pokeball which we already mentioned, and then the 2 Rocky Helmets. So this is like more of like a aggro build, I would say. Less of like a control of like the Chinglings and then the Jirachi before the Alteria. And now the Alteria, which is going to be healing 40, dude, with the Rocky Helmets, like things probably don't want to start swinging into it because you're going to need to be able to swing a high damage thing, which is probably going to be a Mega Pokemon or the only Pokemon you have that is going to be like a heavy hitter. And like Rocky Helmet is going to let you do 150 damage. You're going to be healing 40. So like anything that previously attacks this is probably not going to be doing any damage realistically. So kind of like this build. Like I said, bro, it's a more tanky one because of Indeedee. I think Indeedee is a really broken and slept on card, and I expect this card to kind of just be here and there for the rest of the year to your Pokemon pocket unless something else takes its place. Next up is going to be a different form of Absol. This one was way more played like during the week 1, But it's going to be like Cleffa, Hydreigon, Mega Absol, and Hydreigon is just literally like a Rampardos person nuke. You can't get that 130 damage if you do find the rare candy right away. It's going to be playing 2 Professor Research, 2 Copycats. 2 Copycats, common theme, bro. Every deck that is not super consistent is just playing 2 Copycats, like especially like rare candy decks. It's just probably the best card. If not, I think it's like maybe like the second best support card besides Cyrus, for not counting Professor Research, just because of how it is played. Besides that, I do like the 1 Sabrina, the 1 PCO, the 1 Giovanna, the 1 Cyrus here, the 2 obviously rare candies, the 2 Pokeballs, the 1 Giant Cape. This version is a really aggro. You just try to get Hydreigon, like Turbo Hydreigon, start nuking stuff. You have that Absol for that late game. And yeah, that is essentially what it is. Live and die by the draws. Fast Hydreigon can sweep through the game. If not, can be a little bit of trouble. But that's also where you have the Cleffa there to, you know, at least have a couple turns to be able to go 1-1. Preferably if you like the God scenario is going to a Hydreigon Absol. Sometimes you have to go Cleffa Hydreigon Absol, and that's still pretty good. So I like the deck. It's really fun to play. It's really fun to just nuke stuff. But let's move on to the second final deck. This is going to be Luxray. So Luxray got a new version with this one that does 110 damage. It also damages 20 damage to one of the things on your bench, which can be kind of annoying to be honest. But this is just a very aggro deck because you do have the energy generation with Faulkner. Oricorio is also really good into the meta to wall off these mega Pokemon, as well as Zera for the energy generation, so you can like elemental switch, maybe turn 1 rare candy in like the most godlike scenario. However, 2 Professors, 2 Volkners, the 1 Cyrus. They also play like a 1-1 Luxray. This one also does the 120 damage to the bench, which can be good obviously in certain scenarios to get that finisher on a mega Pokemon, as well as the rare candies, the 1 E-switch, because we don't have a lot of room and we always want a hand disruptor, so we have the 1 red card. This deck, not the best, because at the end of the day it is an electric deck. However, it can be extremely turbo and do high damage fast, so it's good, but it's not going to be that top tier like some of the other decks on this tier list, mainly like the Absol Ori and the Suicunes and the Magnezones. I would say this is probably the second best electric deck. I definitely think Magnezone is overall better because it is a little bit more consistent, plus Magnezone is more tanky. But yeah, yeah, it's a cool electric deck, dude. I think let's just move on to the final deck of the video, which is going to be another electric deck. So for the last deck, I had an option of Blaziken or Jolteon. Blaziken is that Stokes art. The list basically has not changed. And yes, it can be extremely good if you get the turn 2 going second rare candy like every single game. But at the end of the day, it is very inconsistent. It's not having the best tournament results anyways because of the Oricorios in the format. So I chose Jolteon. This is the most standard list. However, I don't think the deck is actually that good, but it has seen play. I think the lists have been evolving to drop the Pikachu. I think a more pure Jolteon Zera, yeah, and maybe like 1 Ori still might be the way to go. And maybe even playing like the non-EX Jolteon that does do 60 when you first evolve. I just don't know what this deck really beats. I think I'd rather play Luxray or, you know, Magnezone, because at least I'm hitting that high heavy damage without relying on something like a Pikachu in the end game. However, it still gets the job done. It is still a good deck, don't get me wrong. It's probably just like a mid-tier deck in my opinion. 2 Jolteons, the 2 Zeras, and 1 Oricorio, the 1 Pikachu, 2 Profs, bro. We have the 2 Cyrus, I mean, bro. The 1 Mars, the 1 May. I like May in stage 1 decks way more than rare candy decks because you want to find the stage 1. Like, May doesn't really give me the rare candy. So I kind of like May better in like a deck like this than something like the Decidueye. 2 E-switches because we want to be able to, you know, go first, evolve in the Jolteon, Zera, E-switch, the God combination. 2 Pokeballs, the 1 XP because energy is very important as everything is 2, especially if you don't start of Zera, everything will be extremely rough for the energy on the deck and going first. And the 1 E-core to be able to transfer that energy onto the Pikachu to get that final game KO. Anyways, I think these are some of the best deck lists right now. There are some cards that are missing, bro, or some decks that might be missing. These are just the ones I wanted to cover on the channel. Anyways, if you made it this far, let me know which of these decks you've tried before, and let me know which one is your favorite in the comments below. Peace out, have a lovely day as always.